Hello guys, in this video we'll see how we can use Terraform in order to create a setup for PHP MySQL together with NGINX. This is the main site of Terraform and we can install it depending on the OS distribution that you have. Here I am under Ubuntu and I've just installed the predefined binary. Afterwards you just need to put the binary into your path in order to invoke it from whatever location you are. The goal is when you open a terminal to be able to invoke Terraform to have it responding. Okay, and now let's see the project. All right, so we are here in Visual Studio Code, and basically Terraform reads all the files that are having extension TF as well as TF-vars, and afterwards it interprets them. So you can split your configuration into multiple files. On top of this, we have modules. Here, for example, if we take a look at the versions, we have providers defined inside, because the point is that providers, for example, are allowing all those configurations to be read and executed on a compatible host. For example, here I've installed the Docker provider. It's installed in the modules as well as in the normal configuration outside of the modules. And by typing Terraform in it will initiate those providers, it will install them, and they'll be ready to be used with Terraform plan, apply, and destroy and other commands. Okay, so after you've set up your providers, we can take a look at the main configuration. Here is inside of the modules. So since NGINX, PHP, and MariaDB will be installed inside of containers, the main TF here is acting as a template for further customizations. And for example, here we are defining a resource, which later will fill. As you can see, it accesses local variables for its parameters, such as name, image, and others. And in order to load this configuration, we have one containers file outside of the modules that for each of our containers is loading them and referring, for example, local containers MariaDB. We'll go to the locals file. We'll find this big object. Okay, so this is locals. Then it will need to find the containers. So locals.containers. And then inside of this nested object, it needs to find MariaDB. So we'll get MariaDB. And here actually we have the configuration for MariaDB. What we see that inside of it, we are getting the default configuration for MariaDB. So we'll get to container defaults, and that's how it looks. So this will be applied to each of the containers, and this is done in order not to write all the time this information, but to have it in each of the containers. And then it will write the current configuration. So it will merge this configuration with this object. So we'll set up the name. It will get it with string interpolation from local project name. So if I just press Control and go over the variable, we can see directly the value of the referenced variable. Okay, so it will go, and for the name, it will get PHP app. If we click, you see in the locals TF, in this section, we have project name variable. Okay, then it will get the specific MariaDB image. So now for the health check, if we go to this part of the code, again, we have some health check defaults, which are set up. And then specifically for each of the service, we have check. For example, here for MariaDB, we are executing something inside of the container. It's already created for us by the maintainers of the container, and we are executing some parameters to see if the engine is working. As you can see, here is the health check config for PHP, MariaDB, and NGINX. Afterwards, we have the network configuration. The same way we see this is the default for the networks. And then we're accessing the volume configs specifically for MariaDB. If I click here, we'll see that for MariaDB, we have created one directory inside of the data and then MySQL. In this way, we are creating a shared volume directly inside of our machine that we can access. Now to the next line of the configuration. Here we're setting up environmental variables for the container to boot. And basically we are going and looking at the database credentials, and we are setting up environmental variables starting with MariaDB, where we are reading the keys and the values directly from DB credentials. If we click here, we see here the object structure, but we don't see the values. So here they are just defined inside of our variables TF. If we go to the other file, Terraform tfvars. Here we have defined all the sensitive information. There are several ways you can define this, and you can have one gitignore file not to commit this file in the repository. You can also use secrets. The point is not to leak this information. So basically, we'll read this data and we'll provide it as an environment to our MariaDB container. Let's see now the PHP container configuration and what kind of differences it has. For example, here we're using the command directly to set up some configuration options, to read some files, and to install extensions such as MySQL. This means that it will read from our config directory and it will read this extension MySQL. Then again, we have health checks, networks, and in the volumes, we're allowing with the host path to map the source directory from our host, which we are hosting our index.php file inside of the container. So it will be copied and we'll be able to connect to MariaDB and actually develop our code here, as well as we can set up a certain limits over the memory and CPU to be used. And here we see another example on how the environment can be directly set up from here, not read from another file. So here we are reading the configuration files from variable php config, and this is inside of our variables tf file. So we have certain configuration here, which we use in our environment. All right, so let's see how we can execute and start the whole configuration. It's quite easy. We need to just type Terraform apply, and it will give us a summary of what it will happen. Basically, Terraform keeps state files, and it will check all of those configurations, whether something has been changed from before. And if it has, it will perform actions to keep the internal state equivalent to the configuration files. This means that if we have added another container, it will just perform actions to start this container. Here in this case, it plans to destroy the running 3 containers and add them again. So I type yes. By the way, if I type docker ps, we'll be able to see that our 3 containers are being created. We can see that the health checks are starting of our containers, and we can use Docker logs to check the state. For example, in the NGINX container or the PHP app container, we can see that it's already starting the creation of the container. Some modules have been installed. That's why it's still the health check starting. We have put some delay not to fail. And now if we try to load up a browser, we see that some of the services such as NGINX are ready, but MariaDB is not ready. That's why we have bad gateway. But as long as the health check shows healthy, we'll be able to browse the whole configuration successfully. As you can see, everything is healthy. Let's return to the browser and we see connected successfully. So that's the configuration. Terraform is vast. There are a lot of nuances to be taken care of. While working on the examples, I managed to go through several courses and used coding helpers. So if you're interested in exploring Terraform, this is one way with a local provider. And then when you feel comfortable, you can check the other providers for AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure. Okay, guys, thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.